Can we start, please? Se bomo brez maske? Ne bom. No. Hello from my part. I'm Magda Aljancic. I would like to, first of all, I would like to wish you happy Biodiversity Day. I don't know if anyone else was doing today, but I'm happy to match our event with the Biodiversity Day, World Biodiversity Day, and to dedicate the final debate and a roundtable to this nice celebration. So I invite you to have an e-science and open science to address challenges in conservation of Proteus. We have two lectures, short lectures, Professor Alberto Basset from University of Salento and LifeWatch Eric. And Gregor will show a case of collaboration within LifeWatch. Not to keep you very much, I would like to invite Professor Basset to have his keynote lecture. And we are very happy that they also collaborate for our meeting and support it.
Thank you so much, Magda. Thank you to the organizer. It was a great honor for me to be here in this meeting, and I also learned a lot of things on Proteus, which is fantastic. It's a very, very interesting, not only species, but also system. I'm going to speak a bit about alien species research. Since alien species are considered one of the most important threats to biodiversity, and this is the Biodiversity Day, I'm going to speak about that from the point of view of a research infrastructure. So don't expect that I'm presenting something that we do for as a research in biodiversity, but I'm going to present some of research line that has been realized by the user community that are working on alien species research using the facility that LifeWatch is offering. So that is the principle of a research infrastructure that is this one. And in order to change slide, no? Just a pointer, okay. Okay, then I will try to do. Okay, so, and then just before starting, a few slides on LifeWatch Eric as an infrastructure, because I think this could be useful to give you some highlight. First of all, to give some highlight of what is an ERIC. You have an ERIC here in Trieste, which is Cheric ERIC, the synchrotron, which is one of the earlier and the most important new research infrastructure in Europe, and LifeWatch ERIC is another one. The ERIC is the European Research Infrastructure Consortium, so it's a research infrastructure that is actually established by the European Commission according to some level of legal entity, which is a bit different from the international organization, but is again an international organization. Is funded by the member state. has not a deadline, an ending time. It's not a project. It's simply a research infrastructure as the synchrotron, and then we can speak about Lifeocheric as a sort of biodiversity synchrotron. That is what we can do. And then as a number of characteristics as a consortium of member states. In terms of Lifeocheric is a research infrastructure that is dealing with biodiversity and ecosystem research, and as a characteristic niche of Lifeocheric is that it is an e-science research infrastructure. So basically, it is an infrastructure that is building services for the research, the scientific community, starting from the data. And the data are actually for e-research infrastructure, the real infrastructure. Then the ICT component is representing the technical tool that are making available the infrastructure, the data, to the researcher and to the scientist. So you can see in this way that as a research infrastructure, the e-science research infrastructure is merging field observation and laboratory observation through interoperability of data into a component which is the e-science component that basically provide digital-based services and tools for data and computing-intensive research in virtual collaborative environment. That is basically the system. As a research infrastructure, Lifeoch has some of keywords. So first of all, it is supplying research facility to scientists. This research facility are aimed at adding knowledge and deepening understanding on the key issue of biodiversity and ecosystem. And I think that is also relevant to be today for the Biodiversity World Day, because you know that in Italy we are going to have in a few weeks, we can say, a National Center for Future Biodiversity that has been established by the Ministry for University and Research. I think has been a not expected, an impressive change, and most probably not only for biodiversity in itself, but this is a clear indication of how relevant our current government is considering biodiversity and the conservation of biodiversity also for economic and social development. But in order to fit with all this need, we need to make clear to all the different community that we still need to add and improve our knowledge on biodiversity, on its organization, on this relationship with functioning and services, in order then to be able to have a sort of exploitation of biodiversity in terms of green economy on blue growth that could actually approach sustainability, because we need knowledge. And that is what we can get through the different infrastructure that are promoted in the game, including Lifeoch. And then for this reason, the overall aim of being an infrastructure then support society to address the key planetary challenges and the key planetary goal. In other terms, what we can say is that what we need to do is to actually promote science for a sustainable future. And then it's also great to have a center which is a National Center for Future Biodiversity. These images that I'm going to show you, other images that I'm going to show is coming from a magazine which is an alien species magazine that has been produced from the activity that has been done on alien species in the last year. Then just a word on how infrastructure works and how Lifeoch is working. We have been established in 2017. been actually funded by the member state in 2019. So basically, we are under construction completely. What we are build in a real way are the common facility. But while we are under construction, we are also already operational for some issue. And I'm sure that you can imagine that in order to be able to offer opportunity for research on all the different fields that are covering biodiversity and ecosystem research, the construction of Life Oceanic will never end, no? Because there are always fields that could be relevant for the scientific community, and then we need to build something for them. And in this process, we have two different components. One component is going to be considered as a top-down component. It means that as executive board with the General Assembly, we define strategic line of development of the infrastructure. For example, for the next 5 years, surely one of the strategic line is biodiversity and ecosystem response to climate change. But then there are a component which is user-oriented, and then are also a co-construction process. So co-constructing component together with projects. Projects produce fantastic things, but then they last 3 years or 4 years. At the very end, there is a very high risk that we are losing the knowledge that has been produced, we are losing the services, we are losing the data that have been produced. So that is one point basically in terms of co-construction. And if we go then, what actually we mean in terms of construction, whatever it is, for the strategic one or the co-construction, is then is a basic process that takes care of make data actually accessible, findable, and then usable. So bringing in a process of completely open data, open science, and then develop all the steps of data curation that are coming from the data availability, then to all the modeling and statistical analysis services that are then can be actually collected, we can say, in the virtual research environment, starting from the simplest, plus the new Jupyter Notebook that are really new virtual research environment, to more complex, but simply we can say putting through the data and the services researched in order to be able to have in the same lab facilities that are coming from satellite images and Copernicus mission to the genomic sequencing that generally rarely are in the same lab. Then one slide for Life Watch Italy, simply because we are in Trieste, and in Trieste we have both the University of Trieste and the OGS, which are members of Life Watch Italy. And in terms of Life Watch, then Life Watch has now a membership of 8 national states, which is Italy and Slovenia are 2 of them, and then Spain and the Netherlands, together with Italy, are managing the infrastructure, which is based as a legal entity in Spain. And then there are Belgium, Greece, Bulgaria, Portugal, that are also being part of the infrastructure. And in very short term is what we can offer to scientists is fair data, resource and services, catalog of resources, which is the Eco Portal, standards and semantics in order to better use the resources, a number of web services, virtual research environment or technical composability layer for the virtual research environment, including the Jupyter Notebook, and then education, training, and community collaborative platform, and of course, computational power, which is needed in most cases. Then the first actually activity that LifeWatch has done as a research infrastructure. I don't know if Fabrizio stood up because I already spent 10 minutes. Yes. Okay, I'm going to be faster. Then has been an activity that we have funded with the LifeWatch shared resources on invasive alien species. And you can find out the link for the component of the website where we have this activity, and then also the component where we have the communication material. Communication material which involve video, posters, podcast, presentation, and so on. And the activity has been done through a number of case studies that were trying to touch a few components of the research on invasive alien species with different kind of not only scientific objective but also tools. There is only one point that we didn't manage to actually address because there's some difficulty in the literature, intrinsic, which is to try to describe the full process from start of invasion, explosion, and eventually establishing as almost a naturalized species or a decline, which is also very common. But the point is that while there are a lot of publication on the blooming part, if there is an establishment or if there is a decline and the establishment as a naturalized species, then looks to be not interesting too much, and it's really difficult to get that. And then we have a number of cases on terrestrial ecosystem with Ailanthus, on the marine with merging metagenomics with observation and the arm studies, on the trophic web with the invasive Callinectes, and on other different components. You can find out all the case studies, and basically for every case study, then what I think could be more interesting is to have a look at the workflow, how they are organized, how then we can have used the data, which are going to be the services that has been developed in order to analyze the data, to merge the data from different sources, and which are the very end result that we got. And then in the magazine, you also find out some way of trying to control invasive alien species, moving a threat to an opportunity. And then it's the case of the blue crab, but also the other crab and other kind of freshwater invasive species. Just one thing, the very last point. We want to work for the community. We want to work with the community. The invasive alien species has been a community. Now we are working with a group of the species red list of UCN, trying to build services for them. And then it's a start that is in progress. It is working in the community. We have another group that is already working in the community. The community has been published 1 week ago on LifeWatch Italy. Is going to be published in a couple of weeks on LifeWatch Eric as well. So you are a community. You are a community working on Proteus. If you want to use our community in order to actually reinforce your networking and have a common place where you can actually join from time to time, we will be very happy to support you. And then it's the case that is done for other different community and utilization. I took more than my time. I'm sorry about that, and thank you for your attention.
I would like to thank you to Professor Basset. I would propose just to continue with the lectures, not to keep your time. And then at the end, we include the questions in the debate. Just a little for my round table. Gregor? No, my round table, a little, just a short introduction. No, the other. Okay. Okay. I'm also part of LifeWatch Slovenia Consortium, which was established in 2017. I'm happy to collaborate in several working groups in the LifeWatch in the international community. And I'm also happy that recently I was published a paper with my colleagues in the shape of data. So it's nice to contribute to the biodiversity, especially for Proteus in such case. We, together with the colleagues from, it's an international team from the communication, we even upgrade the map of Slovenia. We give also Proteus on the map, so it was not before, even the black Proteus. So we are happy to collaborate. In Slovenia, we have several members of a consortium. Here are members from University of Ljubljana. Recently, we also Tular Cave Laboratory. And recently, it was just finishing last year in August, an important project which we managed to acquire important equipment who is now facilitating our research. And this project, it's RISI LifeWatch, development of research infrastructures for the international competitiveness and of the Slovenian development of research infrastructure space, was awarded by the European Regional Development and the Ministry of Education in Slovenia. So it was a lot of money invested in a good equipment, in professional equipment, and now what we propose to do for a case related to Proteus with equipment from this project will Gregor now explain. So just no, it's Vilabs.
I will try to quickly present you this very early stage of the idea to build not one but actually two different virtual laboratories. One monitoring Proteus through its behavior and studying its ecology, and the other by our colleagues at the Karst Research Institute in Postojna, monitoring the groundwater habitat, and this both linked together with the data collected would then give the whole picture of the situation. I would start with how the idea of monitoring of Proteus behavior was growing in our particular case in Tular Cave laboratories, starting of course with just simple observation, just like in the 19th century. My father used the red light, observing for those relatively short periods of time when he was present in the lab. At that time, this was the most efficient way to learn at that time also a very unknown ecology and behavior of Proteus. Later, when I joined as a high school student with my schoolmate Gorazd Klemenčić in '89, we prepared a small pilot test or research at the National Science Youth Competition to answer that something that I was missing following father's work. What does Proteus do when we leave the lab, during the night, if you wish, at 3 in the morning? and so on, do we and probably do miss some important moments that we would otherwise have to wait for years to catch. And one we were thinking with this friend of mine what we can do with just simple material that we had available, and he had a SRL camera with a motorized transport of course the film that was there at that time. I had then the house computer, the ZX Spectrum that we were mainly using for playing video games, but with a small basic program I made it into a cheap available timer that was controlling the camera, so triggering the electric switch and so on, and we were able to get some photos that was developing then film. It was this was one of the first with some errors in development, but you could still see what was the point. The animals, let's say this was maybe 5 or up to 30 minutes periods between shots, and you could actually see where they go, and even to actually set it the right frame. This was quite a challenge at the analog era. But then such a graph of positions of heads turned out, and it appeared that animals are actually concentrating its position somewhere, like having hidings, but we couldn't be sure, because anyone could ever say that this is just because these are small laboratory pools. And then in the second half of '90s, the analog video became available, and this is the first surveillance camera that we got filming in this TV resolution, and at the same time, under my mentor, Professor Peter Schlegel and Boris Bullock, we were developing early video tracking programs, as the computer power has already risen from the Spectrum to more powerful PCs. And, but this was relatively easy, because this was just one animal, or if you like, in a laboratory pool, you would always know how many animals were there. Which seems to be trivial, but this is until recently this question was not possible to overpass, because in nature you can never know how many animals are actually on the view. Also, I met before, of course, with meters of videotapes, but these were actually first big data that I start to think about what to do with this, and then finally we could switch to digital high megapixel cameras that would give us the missing details of what we were looking, such as how does actually look the position of Proteus. And also the Magda joined at that time with the new techniques enabled to study the space use again in a semi-natural conditions of Tular, but as we see from maybe the last report of Gergely and colleagues in Nature in Herzegovina, some concentrations or hidings chosen by animals appeared also in captivity. And then with all this, the question, we turned back to nature again, of course, with all this new technology that we could think of what at that time I was calling a virtual laboratory in nature, to compare with observations in Tular, where you could observe them in their underwater habitats, like submerged sections of cave by cave divers. But this is, of course, I can say from my experience, but also in general, not a very efficient way. If you how much you have to invest, and not to mention what all can happen with the diver actually having only starting in such as the spring of in Ilsheonik with the black Proteus opened this answers of what they do there, of which we've heard a lot today. And then, of course, the whole picture start to show an exit. These questions of that we could learn in the Life Watch summer school in Lecce in 2017, that opened really this question that were unknown to me, like what is actually this big data, and it's not just gigabytes of on your hard disk, but also the whole complexity and the life cycle of it, that the service that is of course now we managed to collect most of the equipment from data loggers with which we will monitor the environmental changes, the sonars that would open our eyes in the high water and the muddy conditions that we know nothing about, and measure the physical habitat and so on, and but also how to install and how to even manage in the remote locations of a cave system with the electricity question, and also how to minimize the electromagnetic radiation that we know Proteus can be sensitive to with its electroreceptors and so on, and not to lose too much energy on the other hand, and so our colleagues from the Faculty of Computer and Information Science are those who will actually round this idea to establish where is the right equilibrium of input energy and the data requirements to be significant. Also the colleagues from LifeWatch Belgium that will join this, have joined this started program with their already solutions of camera processing of, so this is just for the camera traps. Then we also have this full-time cameras with this platform Aguiti that I will not go now into details, that though will have to be adapted to the specific of Proteus habitat and the animal itself. So, yeah, thank you.
as we have some examples today, how it's challenging this studying behavior of Proteus in the wildlife, and how much challenges you have to process data and to have enough people to work on this and so on. And maybe it's time to look for such platforms, for infrastructures to, I think there are already people there who can help. So without a multidisciplinary team, we can't do much. So that's why we are happy to build a team which includes also computer scientists, biologists, geographer, GIS, and so on. So everything is connected with everything. So probably will take a while until we find again another financing support for this. But the plan is start to be really good and start to get more and more ideas. And probably we need to connect even more for realization of this project. If you have any questions, first of all, for Professor Basset or for Gregor, please, we would like to. So if not, I would propose just to see if it's any, in the perspective of LifeWatch, there is some invasive species that are threatening the life of Proteus in the wild. And I think here, even for the citrid fungus, who is now within the studies and so on, it could be such a threat for Proteus. If you have some other threats which can evolve, like these studies for the invasive species, if you like to comment for this, and if you, yeah.
Thank you. About these invasive species, luckily in caves we don't seem to have a lot, so I don't see a real need to push for it. In Proteus, there is a concrete challenge where we are completely ignorant at the moment, and this is parasitology. Also pathology, but mostly eukaryotic parasites. We know now from, for instance, from Postojna Planina cave, which is a heavily organically polluted habitat, that although there's a high concentration of animals, or maybe even just because of that, they are often in a bad condition, and we don't know is there a causal or relationship? Is the animal in a bad condition and then gets the parasites, or vice versa? But there are several 5 to 10 different species for which we don't really know. We don't even know the phylum which they belong to. So this is one of the areas that probably needs much more attention and also funding, parasitology.
Yeah,
maybe some of them are could be invasive, alien. This is, of course, a possibility because it's something new. We didn't know this before.
I know that it's Proteus biome. It's actually hard to define, isn't it? Or if you comment.
No, I just what Peter already said. That this I was having in mind that pathogens themselves are, as we know, of course, for chytrid. And of course many others that, for example, we also notice through the sanctuary for injured Proteus, that is an instrument to also to evaluate the health of the nature, and it's things that no one has appearing that no one has ever noticed in decades of observations before. But maybe many, of course, were just missed because there was no particular interest in veterinary aspects and parasitology. But some are perhaps really appearing now with the changes in pollution that could rise, such as Peter said, and even climate change could have such impact. Yeah.
Professor Basset would like to address your question.
Not to ask a question, because I see that the major theme of the conference is facing climate change challenges for Proteus. And thus, for LifeWatch, surely one of the priorities in the next 5 years is dealing with biodiversity and ecosystem response to climate change. So can I ask you which are the major challenges that are coming from climate change to Proteus, and both in terms of species response and habitat response, and if then we can eventually discuss if and how could eventually we establish collaboration on this issue. So which are going to be the most relevant challenges that are going to be posed by climate change to Proteus and Proteus conservation?
I can start with an idea. Maybe the climatic events who are now unusual, maybe also affecting the so-called seasonality if it exists in Proteus, or the reproduction seasonality on Proteus. Maybe it's changing a lot. It's, I don't know, maybe now it's more food, if you have other ideas for...
Yeah, just Nicola has already reminded us on many of these things, and we can simply not name all. We don't know most of them, I guess.
I got my presentation about this yesterday, but it was 20 minutes. The summary is that we have no idea of what will happen, but we have to take care of multiple aspects, because it could be really a very, very different aspect in which climate change can influence the biology of olms and all the other subterranean biodiversity. But up to now, we don't have any evidence at the moment as exactly like alien species. So in a cave environment, we don't have at the moment any data. For sure. It will be for sure of flooding, temperature, some will probably dry up for sure, because groundwater is not isolated from rainwater, and the rains moods are changing and the temperature are changing. So for sure we will have this change. It depends about the habitat. Probably for the olms who lives like Doberdon in the much more surface water, with change can be very high. Who olms lives in much more deep water, could be not so high. It depends also from other habitat. For instance, in the mountains, we have much more effect than in the lowlands. And near the sea, we have much more effect than far from the sea. So it's very variegated, and it's difficult to predict now. For sure will happen something, but we have no data and it's difficult to predict. Okay. Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to add, as Magda already mentioned in the first place, the Proteus is just simply to say, following the key strategy, it's a reproduction to begin with these long reproductive cycles that we know from cave laboratories, and then a low number of eggs and so on. This just seems to be on hand that such a species would not be able to respond positively to these quick changes. But also what is worrying is that the result of such changes that could be devastating for Proteus could be noticed very late. We would see animals still there, but in fact there would be already over the edge.
I will also have a question for Professor Basset. If you see, how you see Proteus in these infrastructures, in LifeWatch infrastructure? Do you see as a part or just a sequence in in the whole project, or it can have, because it's a niche area, so we are not so many in this, but still we need it's a so important species that we need to know how.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that since Proteus is one of the priority for Slovenia, it's one of the priority for LifeWatch. That is the principle on which we are building our strategic plan for the next 5 years, is then collecting the input from the national member states. So since it is a priority, it's a priority. The other thing is that it's a very relevant species for a critical habitat, could be one of the most important sensors that we can have in order to understand the ecosystem response to climate change. That is why I was asking. Then we are planning, we are entering in LifeWatch in the last Horizon Europe call, I think we have entered 8 projects dealing with different aspects of biodiversity, and we are probably entering new projects in this call, in the next call. Some of the call are dealing to global change, changing in biodiversity and ecosystem. And then one of the decoding mechanisms is dealing with metabolism. And then again, that's why I was asking for Proteus, because I think we could get a lot of very, very relevant information. So surely we can have it a priority, and surely one thing that we could practically do since the beginning is then using the community and then merging the scientific community in the community, particularly when we will have in LifeWatch Eric, but you can use LifeWatch Italy at the moment, in order to start having discussion, and then keep in mind we are going to put in our strategic plan.
To make your life more easier, I would just ask some colleagues which are working in different fields, which are the challenges they have, you know, computational challenges, stuff like this. I would start with Valeria, because she was working in genetics and she was working with a lot of data. You're too quiet. So what are the challenges you have working?
Actually, there is, as we have seen in these 2 days, I think there is a lot of challenges on Proteus topic, on Proteus research, and actually, as Hans presented yesterday, in a sense of genetic, you opened this question. I think it's very obvious where were and where still are the challenges, because actually the first data were genetic data were collected on Proteus about 20 years ago when Peter and Spila started with this study, and so now we are adding and we are working on this topic in, I would say, in some fluctuations, which depends, we have questions which stays open and depends, of course, on projects and people that are available to work on them. So,
What about computational challenges? Because I know you have immense data on the process, so how you deal with this part?
so I think for computational challenges, now we have really a lot of data, but this Hans will be more appropriate to answer this question.
Yeah, the challenges are that you need a lot of storage space and computational power in order to analyze genome scale data of a species with such a big genome as Proteus. Even just sequencing one individual is a massive challenge, but the direction of the field is to sequence whole genomes from not only one individual of a species, but many individuals of a species. And for this, there is no infrastructure at the moment. We are even struggling with assembling the genome, which is not surprising given that it is so large. But yeah, there is the computational power and space is definitely a challenge. We collaborate with BGI in China and with sequencing centers also in Europe. Yeah, you have to, because you cannot solve this problem on your own. So definitely you need input from many sources. And this is also a challenge because people come from different backgrounds with different expertise. And integrating that is not always easy, but it's a necessary.
There are challenges. What about?
Okay. I think probably the biggest challenge is stable research environment, because we need long-term studies for to detect effect on climate change or to work on the topic, as Valeria mentioned, that it's really fluctuating. Now you have a PhD student or a research group or a grant to work on the topic for 2 years, but 2 years, I refer to Esther's as well. So it's just not enough. We need long-term data, and even our small scale study with mark and recapture require 10 years to carry out, because they are like really slow moving, slow reproduction rate. So you can't really have 1 or 2 year grants and achieve real data. And if the effect of climate change is so important in the project, then it should support like long-term studies. I think that's the...
Excellent. And I just want to, on one more point of view, maybe from Marketa, who was just publishing data on Proteus. You said that data were staying for some years, not used yet for...
Yeah, actually, it's the topic that we are dealing with in our laboratory, as we are also working with 3D data. These are big data. It's a big volume stacks in 16-bit. We also have the experience with the industrial company where we do measurement for them. So there is a question also of privacy and so on, or the ethics for biological projects. So it's a big topic in our laboratory. And it's good to discuss about that. Like for what we did for Proteus, we feel that it's important to share the data, to not to just to keep the data in our personal storage, that is really important to share. And if you want to comment.
Yeah, maybe I can add that I have a feeling that we are here in different groups in some sense just scratching the surface, because there is not a big long-term project where all the effort can be focused to the topic. So we are rather insulated. We in Brno for sure, because we are doing biological project just because we would like to show that the industrial models of computed tomography which we are doing in the most of the time are applicable also to answer some biological questions. So we are doing some back projection from the industry to the biology, and we are using rather expensive software and rather expensive equipment to help somehow to answer some questions which are, but we don't feel any systematic support how to continue on this topic, and this is, I think, the most missing things. And I am happy that here is this Life Watch initiative which can somehow put a base to it, at least I hope.
Yeah, I would add also the changes in personnel. We don't have support, financial support to maintain the same people all over the years, you know, to continue the research. I can tell the case in Tular because we are now hoping to the third generation to explore further the Proteus, but it's a hard work, long-term work, so it's in a stable environment. Still, you slowly came to the real data. So there are more things to have in mind for. If you have some answers.
No, thank you so much. Answer is a big word, but I can tell you something surely. So as I told, I think that if Proteus is a priority for Slovenia and is going to enter the strategic working plan for the next 5 years, we are going to actually invest in Proteus. That is one thing that we can say by sure. There are two components. I am back to this slide because one thing is clear from this slide is that we are a landscape of research infrastructure. For example, for the long-term study, LTR is going to become a research infrastructure as well. So it's going to be field and laboratory observatory. So in terms of supporting long-term research, it's something that is probably more related to LTR than what LifeWatch is going to do. Because what we are going to do is then ensuring the interoperability of the data and then surely ensuring the computational power. So that is something that is part of what we actually can do. And then the other thing is that we need to enter in collaboration with the different group in order to say what we can do. And that is the other example that I'm going to tell here at the very end. I put this example because it is a work in progress. It's a work in progress that we are doing with a project that is related to UCN to build with a LifeWatch budget services that if we then manage to fulfill exactly the requirement of UCN, is going to be services used by the whole UCN community. And then it's because it's important to, of course, UCN is doing something which is very relevant for biodiversity, and then it's absolutely relevant for us to go in to support this issue. In other terms, we are going to be really happy to support initiative also with the budget that we can have through the ERIC or to the national community, because infrastructure has a meaning if it is serving the scientific community. And therefore, for us, it's part of our mission. It's what we have to do. I cannot tell to you now that I'm going to solve all your problem of computation for the genomics of Proteus. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that if you want to start a discussion about that, and see how can use our virtual research environment and our system to improve what you need. That's what we are doing in this specific case. We will be happy to do that. And then if there are opportunity also to fund with LifeWatch money, which is something that is not actually in the plan, but we are doing, we will do that very happily. But it's matter to understand the process. No? So it's a bit more complex than no, getting needs and giving immediately an answer. But what is surely the answer is that we're going to be interested in terms of the Italian community that is working with Proteus. At the national level, we didn't put Proteus as a priority. We put as a priority from the Italian side biodiversity and ecosystem response to climate change. We put as a priority as Italian SAM the aspects that are dealing with the One Health issue, that is the relationship between biodiversity and ecosystem health in relation to human and agro ecosystem health. So that is something that we are putting among our priorities. And new one are going to come thanks to the support that we're going to have at the national level with the PNRR. So at the national level, we don't have this issue, but this issue can be brought and became important for all LifeWatch through Slovenia. That is what we can do. And at the national level, if everything is going on as it seems to go on, surely we can support many activities through the activity of the PNRR, because we have an infrastructural project that has been applied in Italy, putting together all the infrastructure. So we are together in the same project with LTR, with ICOS, with LifeWatch, with the MBRC, with the actors, so covering all the field from atmospheric to oceanic through the biosphere. So we are going to be in the condition to actually serve the community in a full way. So please refer to us, and then we will try to do basically our best, because it's our job. Of course, I am a professor at the university, so I had to change my mind. I took 10 years, because we started the process 2010 in order to understand which is the difference between a project and the research infrastructure. I took years, because we are used to work with project, and we are used to work in order to do our own research. When you enter an infrastructure, you need to build things in order to allow others to do research, which is a completely different thing. The great advantage for us in the inside, and then we are building services for scientists that we cannot offer to scientists until we have validated all the services. That means that we are the first one to use it. But anyway, it's for someone else. So it's a way we need to start thinking about, because most of funding, even at the European level, will try to move through the European infrastructure, because it's the way Europe has launched in order to increase our competitiveness. And it's the same is at the Italian level. I think that Italy is going to do a very, very great job on research infrastructure. And I am not experienced, so I cannot speak for Slovenia, because I just know what we are doing at the national level. But we are doing a lot of things, also thanks to one of professor in physics that was from Trieste and was one of the main actors in the development of Cherry Carrick and in the development of research infrastructure at the European level, the first chair of the ESFRI, which is Professor Rizzuto. So that is Carlo Rizzuto. And again, that is moving a lot Italy from this point of view. I don't know if I've answered but I think I have answered as much as I could. No? Then we need to start enter a discussion.
Yeah, it's good to know that they are flows developing for data. Slovenia, Italy, they are also parts of different research infrastructures for environment, so we can find partnership and to think on transferability of data and safeguarding our data also, because it's offering that platform to could safeguard your data. Thank you very much for your attention. I think it's time to close the meeting. I would like to thank you, our partners from Trieste, especially to Edgardo, who was putting a lot of effort, energy, and enthusiasm in this meeting. Thank you, Edgardo. Thank you, Nicola, for being such a great host and helping with the program and everything. And thank you, everybody who was helping the students and with the food. They give us great food and great coffee. Thank you for everybody who are coming, and they were giving their presentations and lectures and insights in Proteus research. I hope it's more clear also for you how it's going with Proteus and how much help we still need for our research. So you are most welcome to help us. Hoping that in this Biodiversity Day we can have some good end for this meeting, for such a good hope that we can include Proteus in even more relevant research studies. So thank you for participating.
I have very briefly just to thank Tool Arcade Gregor Madva, the Adriatic Society of Speleology with Marco Restaino here, some of our sponsors, Club 4x4, Dr. Navarini from Illy Café, and also, of course, Alberto Basset from LifeWatch Eric, and Fabrizio and Marco, who all the 2 days were here as a technician in the center of the room, and all our staff volunteer from the Secretariat for the lunch. I hope to don't forget anybody. So Roberta Vidonis, Manuela Spada, Roberta Pauletti, Raffaele Bruschi, Anna Mauri Pastri, Loredana Leghissa, Filippo Cassarino, Veronica Zampieri, Alex Giordano, Gioele Lequio e Federica Gerini. So a big clap to all of them.
follow many I'm for the society. Well, thank you. Thanks to my friend Luciano Longo that with me sharing the experience of 30 years in Speleolivarium, and I remember also Ripirpil, and greetings to the Isabella Bona, our director of the Speleolivarium. Thank you, Isabella. Ho preso la parola in questi 2 giorni e scusate anche. No, scusate anche. Certo, infatti. Scusate anche se è meglio che parli in italiano. Ecco, tanto è un discorso di cuore che andrà oltre la lingua, ma è una cosa veramente che sentirete tutto. No, this is a hard speech that you want to do. No. Innanzitutto ringrazio ovviamente tutti quelli che hanno reso possibile un incontro del genere che è andato. Noi avevamo dei target, insomma, pensavamo che potesse andare bene. È andata non bene, meglio, inaspettatamente. Ecco, è stato veramente un incontro fantastico, grazie al museo. Mi piace ricordare che già la società adriatica, quando non si chiamava di speleologia ma si chiamava di scienze, con anche il Marchesetti, faceva già 200 anni fa le prime ricerche sul proprio. Penso che ci sia un filo continuo tra noi e il museo, e vedo proprio poterci ritrovare idealmente all'interno delle stesse di questa struttura legata quindi a questo, ma legata alla ricerca da più di un secolo. No? Detto questo, grazie a tutti gli ospiti, a tutti quelli che hanno intervenuto, grazie a tutti i partner, ma in realtà grazie infinitamente e unicamente forse a una persona che, come ha detto prima, ecco, Magda, è stata l'anima e il motore di tutto questo, e quindi si merita il più grande applauso. Riccardo Mauri. Grazie.